Happy winter, Dickinson, and welcome back to another episode of the CSSJ Podcast. I'm Jonah Lenahan, CSSJ student intern and resident instant Christmas nostalgic. I'm never excited enough in that lead-up, so I'm 10 times sadder every year in the aftermath.
And I'm Leslie Mazzino, CSSJ student intern and resident bibliofanatic. Just one peanut butter cookie is never enough. Jonah, how are you feeling? Are you happy to be back?
Leslie, I gotta be honest. There's a lot I didn't miss, and I was pretty happy to be warm at home. But do you know what I really got an aching for around Christmas time this year? A craving, Leslie, that got stronger and stronger over the course of the next month, something I could only satisfy here at Dickinson.
Is it the CSSJ making this podcast with me? Because, Jonah, that was really a highlight of last semester for me. I'm proud of the work that we've done so far and excited to see where it goes. And as a senior, I get a special gratification knowing I'm leaving a legacy. Jonah, did you miss me?
Oh, Leslie, wow, that's so incredible. It tugs at the heartstrings. That's a heartfelt message. I feel it in my heart. I'm touched that you feel that way. No, it's the little pre-wrapped breakfast sandwiches at the Underground. You guys know the ones with the damp biscuits in the little plastic wrapper and that thin circle of bacon, or the spicy sausage. The orange melted cheese, Leslie. I really got a hankering for those last month. I had one this morning, actually.
Unbelievable. It's like he doesn't see the setup sometimes. You know, you get what I'm saying?
What, Leslie? Do you need something?
Yeah, Molly, I was trying to complain to you about Jonah.
Jonah? Why? What did he do this time?
Molly, you're in the studio. You should at least be awake. This is the first episode of the semester. A little consciousness would be super helpful.
Leslie, you seem stressed today. Kick back. Have a sandwich.
Ooh, Leslie, you could try this new class I'm taking. I had to overload to get it, but it's 100% worth it. Nap time. It's a seminar. You'd love it.
Molly, I'm trying to get a religion degree. I don't have time to sit in a relaxed class environment for my own enjoyment and chat with friends until I doze off.
Guys, fun Jonah fact. I can't nap.
This conversation is really drifting. Are these mics still on?
Yes, they are, and I bet they're really desperate for an interview. Leslie, do you have a guest to kick off the semester for us?
Yes, Jonah, I do. I will be interviewing Anna Nasser and Bug Adams, co-presidents of Pagan Curious here at Dickinson, about how they formed their community on campus, the challenges, and their hopes going forward.
I'm sure we all want to stick around for that. Molly, are you still with us?
Right here, no worries. The semester is beginning and there's so much to look out for. The Clerk Forum and English and Sociology departments will be holding a talk on February 6th at 7 p.m. in ATS titled Linguistic Justice, Black Language, Literacy, Identity, and Pedagogy. This conversation, led by Dr. April Baker Bell, will explore white linguistic hegemony in higher education and scope out ways to be anti-racist in the language we use in academia. Fun fact, linguistic justice was also Jonah's Minecraft gamer tag in 7th grade.
That is a downright lie. It was actually a recurring quote from The West Wing, my favorite TV show of all time.
Staying on the subject of loneliness, Mob is inviting students to celebrate heartbreak alongside the joys of romance at their annual Valentine's Day Bash in the Underground on February 10th at 7 p.m.
Eating snacks in the basement after dark, the perfect Valentine's Day. Jonah, you can come along with me if you'd like.
Leslie, I'm very offended by this. How do you know I'm not busy for Valentine's? I very well could be. Why don't you ask Molly to go with you?
Okay, fine. Molly, would you like to go to the Valentine's Day celebration with me?
No, I don't think I'm free. Very sweet of you to think of me, though.
It's fine. Jonah doesn't have anywhere to be. Meet me in the hub at 6:45?
Molly, please go on with your report now.
Pay attention, folks, because this is a big one. The DEI division is leading Love Your Body Week again this year from February 11th to the 17th, and it promises to be jam-packed. This week will include a dance class, a film showing, a celebration with ADS, an agility and strength clinic, a salon, and more. You can check Engaged for those dates and times. This is a time of year when it can be hard to think positively about our bodies, and maintaining a good mental and physical health is crucial.
Molly, hey, can I talk about the thing that I'm excited for?
Jonah, Molly's telling the listeners how important it is for them to love themselves as they are. Is this really the time?
Leslie, you're missing the point. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. On February 12th, a whole crowd of students will gather in the social hall for the best possible method of wintertime self-love, eating. It's the International Potluck, a smorgasbord of foods from around the world showcasing cooking skill, cultural custom, and family traditions.
Yes, he's right. Everyone should go to the potluck at 7 p.m. and bring a dish that honors your heritage. Jonah, please don't tell them what you're bringing, because it's the same thing every time.
Pretzels, Leslie! Good old-fashioned hard pretzels with a little bit of salt sitting in an open party-sized bag at room temperature. Do you know why I bring pretzels every time, Leslie?
Yes, please don't do this again.
The year was 1861, and Julius Sturgis was an enterprising young man of just 26 years old, that's not so much older than us guys, when he opened the oldest pretzel bakery in this nation in my hometown of Lidditz, Pennsylvania, after receiving a recipe for pretzels from a homeless man who hopped off the train line that ran behind his bread shop. Ever since then, the Sturgis family has been making pretzels and Lidditz the very same way. In fact, Lidditz used to have its very own baseball team called, can you guess?
Ooh, the Pretzels.
Exactly, Molly Gunn. Thank you. I actually went to the Julius Sturgis Pretzel Bakery on a field trip in 2nd grade. See, Leslie? Culture.
Molly, thank you for your report. Jonah, you can feel free to leave the studio now. Feel very free. Anyway, it's time for our interview.
I'll be back.
With me in the studio today are Bug Adams and Anna Nasser, two of our co-presidents of Pagan Curious, and two of my favorite people on this campus. Welcome to the studio.
Oh, thank you.
Hello, thank you.
Will you begin by telling me a little bit about yourselves, your personal religious backgrounds, your upbringing, academic interests, whatever you feel is most important for us to know about you?
I'm Anna. I use she, her pronouns. I am a junior. My major is religion, which is weird because I never wanted to do that until I got here. And I'm kind of focusing on social justice and colonial studies when it comes to religion. And then I have a double minor in Spanish and women's and gender studies. My own personal religious history is weird and wonky. I went to CCD and a little bit of Catholic school. I went to Montessori school. I always joke that the nuns taught me how to read because they did. But other than that, not really attached to any religion whatsoever. And here I am.
Hi, I'm Bug Adams. I use they and he pronouns. I am also a junior, and I am a double major in women's gender and sexuality studies and East Asian studies. I focus more on the WGSS side of things, especially having to do with queer theory and gender theory and sexuality studies. For me, religion is purely an extracurricular personal thing. I don't do too much academic stuff on it. I was raised Catholic, extremely Catholic, and went to Catholic school until I was 15. Never was confirmed, luckily, because I really did not appreciate being raised Catholic, and it ended up being borderline traumatizing for me. So I didn't really have a good relationship with religion until I started working for the CSSJ last semester. Mm-hmm. And working more with Pagan Curious has helped a lot, and just openly being pagan has kind of helped me work through a lot of my religious trauma and have a healthy space to express spirituality. That's my really complicated relationship with religion.
So then for both of you, keeping that background in mind, what does paganism and or being pagan mean to you? How does it shape your life, your worldview, your philosophy, your interactions with people, how you view your own past?
For me, I tend to call myself a Celtic pagan, which is Ireland and Scotland and a lot of Western Europe. My family's Irish Catholic, so I do tend to focus more on the Irish side of it. Again, it's just a really good way for me to deconstruct the way I was raised and connect with my heritage and my family in a more healthy way, despite the fact that my family is Catholic going basically all the way back. So you have to go pretty far back to find stuff from my family, but it is very helpful to have a healthy outlet for my spirituality. And as far as outlook goes, Celtic paganism is very nature-based, and connecting more with nature really helps me regulate. I work with my oracle cards, or I go in the forest. It just is a healthy outlet for me.
Which is a great general thing, I think, for a lot of college students where we're all stuck on a campus and it's people and buildings and recycled air and stuff all the time, getting out there and thinking about that's not all that there is. That's really healthy. Anna, what about you?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. Just go outside, man. That's where my spirituality comes in. I was never a God girl. I never was into the idea, God, capital G, he, why does my God have to be a he? What's up with that? And growing up, I ended up distancing myself further and further from my organized religious upbringing. And then over COVID, I ended up picking up a deck of tarot cards and getting really into just going outside, spending some time, on a picnic blanket, leafing through tarot cards. And then that kind of evolved to where I am now. My personal spiritual belief isn't necessarily pagan. We talk about pagan as this big umbrella term. So I don't know where it generally falls under that, but it's more of a nature-based relating with the world, reminding myself that these rocks were here long before I was, and they're probably going to be here for a long time after I'm here. And for me, that in and of itself is something grounding, and it's something that is serving that same, God, capital G purpose.
So switching from sort of general talking about paganism to Dickinson. Anna, you were one of the founders of Pagan Curious. How did that come about? What inspired you to say we need an actual community here on campus? And what were some of the challenges or joys associated with that?
Yeah, so my freshman year spring, which was spring 22, I started working at the CSSJ as an intern, and my boss, Cody, who I believe you guys already chatted with on the podcast, right?
Oh, he appears.
He appears occasionally, I'm told.
If I can drag him into the studio.
Cody and I sat down and I was like talking about my personal spirituality. And Cody was like, there's actually a lot of people on campus who have told me similar things about the way that they believe and the way that they practice and the way that they connect themselves to a spiritual belief. I was like, that's crazy. All I see are people on TikTok who are doing the same thing. And he was like, why don't you actually take a step out and maybe figure out if there's a community out there for people who believe in similar things to you? And so that encouragement, along with him providing me with a contact for one of those people, kind of gave us the will and idea that we could go out and start this pagan group. And since then, we've had a pretty steady group of people who are interested. There's definitely a presence on campus. Mm-hmm. However much you wish to make fun of us on Yik Yak, we are here. We're seeing you making fun of us. It's cute every time. But we are here, and there's enough of us that there is strength and happiness in forming a community together.
And Bug, Anna was abroad last semester, and you took on the mantle of president, chair, whatever your preferred leadership mantle is. How was that? Taking over a still relatively new group and trying to continue to, hold it up, hold it strong without, the motherly voice of Anna Nasser watching over you.
It was quite honestly very stressful. And that's not just because of running a club. I had a really bad semester last semester. I was really struggling. So I really just did the best I could with the energy I had. And I'm pretty proud of what I did. I got a couple events together. We did the Samhain thing again. And we got more people at the Samhain event than last year. It was a nice day. Still pretty small, but a good day. So yeah, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do it perfectly and aim really high. I wish I had focused more on just creating community for pagan people on campus rather than trying to reach the whole campus. But I do think that I did an okay job. I tried my best.
I actually think you did a very good job getting that on the record, and I also want you to actually hear that. It's hard. It's hard, especially when it's something like we're talking about building community for people who identify as pagan. There's not a lot of people who are ready to go out there and be like, hey man, I'm pagan. Mm-hmm. Let's go talk about this stuff. We're not coming from the same understanding and background as other people in other religious beliefs that are identified as okay. So having the strength to be able to set time for working on a group, making events, and understanding that the work you're doing is also part of building this community. So I do think that you did a very good job, and I am proud of you.
Thank you.
This is what I mean by motherly voice,
I am mother. I'll take it.
But on the pagan community at Dickinson part, when I was tabling for events, I had people ask me will this be documented anywhere? Is this list public? Because they were afraid of being identified as some form of pagan. And I was like, no, it's not. This group is pretty confidential. But it still just speaks to how fearful people can be about sharing the fact that they have any form of alternative spiritual belief. So it's a hard to reach community if people aren't fully ready to step out there.
I think that overlaps a little bit with some of the other work that we do in DEI, especially with LGBTQ Center. There are, a lot of people who either know they have an LGBTQ plus identity or they're not sure, but they're sort of questioning or experimenting, and they don't want that to be something that's on the record anywhere. They don't want people to see them at these events, at these clubs, in these offices because they're really worried about how that will come across to friends, family, acquaintances. And there is, at least in my perception, and I think documented actually through research, a lot of overlap between queer communities and pagan communities. Because I don't know if you feel that this is true on Dickinson's campus, but
it is.
We have people
Both of
who
us
share.
Are nodding.
Yes, where you have people who share this fear of I might be this thing, but I'm really afraid to figure it out. I don't want anyone to know because I'm just not sure, or even if I am sure, I still don't want people to know. So do you feel that you are you're sort of helping break through that barrier of don't be afraid? Is that part of what you're trying to do with Pagan Curious?
Definitely. As two people who tend to be queer-ish.
We're both pretty out there as people, just in general.
I think there's definitely, we both nodded when you say it, but there is a large overlap. There's this idea in paganism, you talk about it as it's kind of silly, but they call it stepping out of the broom closet, where it's kind of similar to the...
I like that.
Stepping out of the closet when it comes to being queer, where both are met not with the same in any way response, but both are met with responses from people who are that's not normal. Why are you doing that? Why is that a thing you are saying you are? And I think there is such a large overlap there to the point where there's even a generalized term for it. It's not just something on Dickinson College's campus.
Yeah. So finally, the last thing I want to ask is, what are your goals for this semester, for next year, for on and on into the future, for future baby Dickinson Pagans? What do you want to see PaganQ become?
I think it would be nice to, like I said earlier, just engage with people who do identify as pagan and have just kind of more affinity, casual type things, just for us to connect and have fun.
My personal goal is to dismantle any stigma that comes with paganism. Sometimes when I'm like, hey, I run Pagan Curious, people are like, oh, you guys dance around in a circle around rocks and light things on fire? And I'm like, no, we eat pizza and hang out and we do crafts.
I have had to clarify to multiple people that we do not actually practice paganism in Pagan Curious. Yeah. It's just a fun place.
It's a community. Because there's this idea that people who are on the outside of it think that everyone who's pagan is doing the same thing. That's not true.
It's a huge umbrella term. It's like saying that all Christians believe the same thing.
Yeah.
That is so many different types of belief within one giant umbrella.
So when we started PaganQ, we were coming at it from the idea of, we're not going to be able to do something that serves everyone for what they individually practice. However, we can perform the duty of providing a community for people to explore what they want to practice and figure out what they're into and what they're not into. And so I think when you have people coming up to you and they're like, oh, PaganQ, rocks and fire. No, PaganQ, crafts, pizza, and community. So my goal specifically for this semester is to keep working on that. I want very dearly for this campus to become a place where when you mention something like paganism, people don't immediately jump to the idea of Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Well, I'm looking forward so much to all of your events and fun things that you'll come up with this semester and in the future. And I wish you both the best of luck, and we will see you very, very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pagan Curious catchphrase. Do it with me. Womp womp.
Jonah's newsletter article this week brings us his ruminations on the new year and the constant need for newness within the world and within ourselves, despite the tendency for change to be both good and uncomfortable at the same time. Straight off the bat, Jonah assures us that this article will not be about New Year's resolutions, which is a welcome relief because I'm not sure I can hear anything more about his goal to unicycle more this year. For those of you who are listening and don't know, Jonah's an avid unicycler, but the restraints of college life tend to encroach on his writing time. You'll see him getting in a uni session on campus whenever he can, between his many extracurricular engagements. Between his classes, he's always with Prudence. Oh, sorry, that's what he calls his unicycle. If you know Jonah, you know Prudence. And it's like, oh my god, we get it, you cycle. You really got us, being able to do on one wheel what the rest of us plebeians do on two legs. Anyway, he goes on to discuss the motto of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, always being made new, and the importance of looking to people we might not see eye to eye with in order to challenge ourselves to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. I like this sentiment, and think that recognizing this need for self-growth within is impressive and should be commended. Another thing that's impressive and should be commended is the wheelies Jonah can do on his unicycle. Oh, Jonah, why'd you make me say that? You know what, though? Becoming your best self is not all that unlike unicycling. It's an unsteady process to be sure, and at times you're going to feel like you're falling. Sometimes you will fall, and other times you'll be able to rebalance, and both are perfectly okay. You are the one wheel that you're relying on, and it's up to you to shift the weight placed upon you to ride flawlessly into the sunset. So, in echoing Jonah's well-written and reflective article, which you should all go read in this week's CSSJ newsletter, may you all open yourselves to newness in whatever form it presents itself to you this year, and best of luck on your self-growth journey. In the meantime, if you see Jonah fulfilling his New Year's resolution on campus, wish him a smooth ride. He might even tip his fedora at you.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the CSSJ Podcast. I'm here today with Ben Lunde for a short interview segment we're calling A Jaunt with Jonah. These are new this semester. I hope you all enjoy them. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am excellent. Happy to be working on the podcast. Ben and I, for those of you who don't know Ben, we've known each other for a little while now. We met, I think, at the International Potluck, which everybody should try to come to. Ben is also a member of DCF, Dickinson Christian Fellowship, that I am somewhat active in, and so the two of us hit it off. Ben always struck me as an interesting guy, not only because he's got all sorts of interesting facts about him. He's on Student Senate. You can always ask him about the Club Finance Committee, but because Ben is a great guy to talk to about issues of religion and spirituality. Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about your religious and spiritual background?
So, yeah, I'm Ben Lunde. I'm from Rancho Cucamonga, California. I'm a sophomore, IMBM major, and yeah, so I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, have been my whole life, and it's a big part of my identity.
I'm curious, I know that for me, faith has always been about development and growing in relation to God and to my neighbor, and I know that that's changed a lot through my time here on earth as a person, and I'm very curious, what were some moments that proved consequential for your development?
That's a great question. I mean, I totally agree with you about that outlook on just faith and your journey through life. You know, there's been several moments in life. Definitely, I feel like every time life gets hard, that's a time when you have to reconsider or really strengthen your relationship with God, right? I remember I was president of a club my junior year in high school. And, you know, I put a whole ton of work into it, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot from it, and it went really well. But I also realized that that was not my priority in life. And so that was one of the main moments in my life where I decided to put God first. Not just say it, but to actually live it. And so ever since then, I've been experimenting with how to do that. I served a mission for my church. That took up 2 years after I finished high school. And so that was another chance for me to explore my faith in a very in-depth way. Coming here to school, being away from family, and just learning how to be with a new faith community outside of my home in California, and then getting to meet people at DCF and just across campus.
Yeah, that's wonderful stuff. I think a lot of people, like you said, in a lot of faith traditions, Christian and otherwise, wrestle with the idea of, okay, what does it mean for me to put my religious community first, or to put God first, or whatever that might look like for you in your experience. You mentioned that you served in a mission, and I think a lot of people have some very interesting ideas of what missionary work might look like, or you know, maybe they have the idea of like a mission trip where you go and do some service for a week and meet some people and then you come back home, or they have this idea of missionaries like back in the day. But I don't think many people have a very solid concept of what missionary work looked like for you in those 2 years. So how would you characterize that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I didn't really understand what you did on a day-to-day either prior to starting it, but I guess so. I mean, first of all, it was a really great experience for me. So what you do is you take 2 years for guys. Girls can also do this as well, and really it's just an opportunity for you to share what you know, your faith, with other people, at least in our religion, the way we do it. And so I was assigned to work in Spanish with the Hispanic population in Tacoma, Washington, just kind of cities around that area. And so I had a lot of opportunities to be in leadership positions. I got to help out starting a brand new congregation, which,
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Stuff that you wouldn't think of an 18-year-old having the chance to do.
Absolutely not, no.
Yeah, so that was crazy. And just the experience that you have to be able to work with people and get to know, first of all, a variety of people, right? You are knocking doors, talking to people on social media, talking to people in the community, many different outlets, and they're just random people that you've never met before. You're trying to get to know them on a very deep level that many people don't get to know even their own friends at, right? And so when you get to talk to these people, you have to build a relationship with them instantly. And then start talking about what's important to them. Start to build a common sense of truth. You'd be surprised. It's actually not as hard as it seems. Once you get into it, once you get used to it, you realize that, you know, we're all human. We're all trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And you find that your work really is meaningful, that it helps people.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing from you is that missionary work for you was beneficial not only for those who ended up becoming part of an LDS Church community, but also for people who didn't. How do you think that way of thinking can be applied to conversations around religion, faith, spirituality here on campus? You know, I know it's a very different context. You don't have a specific mission. You're just here being a student. But how have you been able to take that ability that you developed to connect with people on a human level and apply it to conversations about faith here at Dickinson?
First of all, I just think everyone needs a friend, right? And the ability to, you know, talk with people is definitely something I was able to work on my mission, to connect with people in that way. I'd also say, because we're all trying to make our way through life, learn about whether we believe in God or just how to be a good person and live a fulfilled life, there's things that we can all learn from each other. And that goes for me as well. I mean, I had a very active role in teaching people for much of my life, but a huge part of teaching is doing the inner work and learning for yourself. Part of that is learning from others. I learned a lot from the people that I taught as well, just hearing from their experiences. Most of them were older than me, so I had plenty of stuff to learn from them. But that goes for my peers here at Dickinson as well. We're a diverse group and really a spectacular group. I love being around Dickinsonians, learning from them, and just working with them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I noticed about you first in some of our early conversations, that you were somebody who was very open to having your mind, if not changed, then at least picked at, examined, to share thoughts in a parallel way with somebody who might think very differently than you. And I'd imagine that happens to you a lot. I know, obviously, Dickinson is not a school where there's a huge LDS presence, right? DCF, Dickinson Christian Fellowship, is not a group that is dominated by LDS Christians. And so I guess my question for you would be, beyond conversations with fellow Christians, how have you been able to navigate conversations with people who are strongly of a faith that is far and away beyond your own?
That was one thing that was very interesting about the mission was I did mostly spend time with Christians, but I also did learn how to explain just even the concept of religion to somebody who didn't really either believe in it or understand it, right?
That's a whole different ballgame.
It is. Some missionaries spend more time doing that. If you're in a country that is predominantly not Christian, then you're going to spend your whole time doing that. I was in the US, so most of my time was spent with people who at least understood the concept. But here and there, I found people who weren't. That being said, again, it comes back to most humans, have the same underlying values and desires to get out of life. Part of it is simply just speaking a more common language. I know in religion we tend to have our own jargon, right? Our own ways
100%.
Of seeing the world. Sometimes we have to take that down to a more basic, down-to-earth level. And that's a skill in and of itself. But as long as you understand the principle of, there's a lot of commonalities between different religions. People are still trying to do their best. We can, by and large, all be friends.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, when they have interfaith conversations, will either get hyper-focused on similarity and say we need to find common ground. That's our only goal. We need to make sure that everybody can find something that they agree on. Or they'll get hyper-focused on difference. And they'll say, all right, well, you're not like me. There's nothing similar about the two of us. You practice this way. You sing these songs. You have these prayers. I do all these things. We have different gods, right? Whatever it may be. And I think that you sort of bring to light a very good point. Becoming too fixated on either of those extremes is problematic when having conversations across faiths or even just across denominations. I'm a Lutheran Christian, and so I have a similar creed to most Christians, right? But you and I have plenty of difference, right? A lot of difference.
Sure.
And so as somebody who spends a lot of time in my own life just thinking about ways that various church communities can come together and become more accepting of one another and recognize commonality and the love that we share, I think that having conversations, even with fellow Christians who are as far removed as you and I are, can be difficult if we get hyper-focused on some of those things.
That's a really good way of putting it. I remember at one of our DCF events, we had Father Ted, who previously spoke on this podcast.
Yep, Father Ted, all-time favorite.
And so I asked him about learning about other religions. Specifically, I wanted to know, how much should you learn about another religion, right? Because, there's so many of them. There's so much to know. What's important?
You're never going to know everything.
But he said if you can learn enough to appreciate why that religion exists, why somebody would want to be a part of that religion, that's a good place to start. And I think that gets to that point where we're discussing that, yes, there's a lot of commonalities, and it's important to understand that, but there's also differences, and they exist for a reason, and it's important to appreciate that as well.
I think Father Ted, the word he likes to use is once you can see the beauty in another tradition, then you'll be on the path to reconciliation and friendship. I do want to talk a little bit about the other side of the coin. We talked about connecting with people and finding unity and friendship, but there's also division, and there is discussion about hard issues, especially among Christians. Are there times, either in your missionary work or here on campus, that you've been confronted with difficult questions by Christian students or people in the world?
Difficult questions, yes. Overall, I would say my interactions at Dickinson have been very friendly and respectful, which I really appreciate. There's great people here. I will say that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is victim to, and it's not the only church out there. There's plenty of faiths that are in this category, but victim to, I guess, a negative stigma, different misunderstandings. And so I do find myself very often having to kind of clear up those misunderstandings, help people to understand that we are normal people. We're just trying, just like everyone else, trying to be good citizens, you know. Sure, there's stuff that's different that we do. I'll be the first to admit that I'm a slightly weird person, but who isn't, right? I think that's low-key what makes people normal, so.
Yeah, you know, we wouldn't want you on this podcast if you weren't a little weird, Ben. You know, that's just the reality of it. Well, it's been wonderful talking to you. You know, our door's always open at Landis House for you or for anybody who wants to talk about their identity, especially their religious, secular, or spiritual identity. And we look forward to talking to you more down the line.
All right. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
That brings us to a close on episode 4. Jonah, I have one question to ask before we finish out the podcast today.
Fire away.
Do you remember at the end of fall semester when I asked you how you'd write the new episodes?
Vaguely. It was a long time ago.
I asked if you'd write at the start of break while you had momentum, or whenever you got bored, or if you'd only work on the new material the night before the semester started.
I recall all 3 of those options, yes.
Jonah, which was it?
I feel that I don't have to answer that question on air.
I'm not taking sides here, but I want to point out that he didn't post anything for the rest of the staff until last Tuesday. That's pretty suspicious.
Yes, Molly, good observation. That does suggest a writing timetable that was a little crunched.
Guys, if you know anything about me, you know I can't do crunches. If you don't like my methods, hire a new writer.
You're not our employee, Jonah. We're not even paying you.
Molly, don't tell him that. We need him to stay focused.
It's going to be a great semester. I look forward to spending it with the 2 of you and our listeners, of course. The CSSJ Podcast returns. Welcome back, everyone. Hey everybody, Jonah here. I hope you've been enjoying this episode. I know I'm enjoying recording it. Before we go, I would like everybody to be aware that there's an event happening tomorrow night at 7 p.m. in the Allison Interfaith Chapel. There will be food. There will be a lot of great people you can hang out with and talk to. This is an event that we're calling Epiphany Gather Us In. It's a time for students of various Christian backgrounds and non-Christian backgrounds, if you're interested, to come and hang out, talk to each other, maybe even do a little bit of study, maybe even a little bit of prayer, but not too much. We're just going to get to know each other and have a good time and try to stay warm. Please come if you can make it. Thanks, guys.
And now, a message from the director of the Center for Spirituality and Social Justice.
This second semester kickoff of the CSSJ podcast is brought to you by the Little Sandwiches at the Underground, which I am told fueled the writing staff throughout their process. I'd also like to thank Jonah, the writing staff, Lenahan, for his last-minute work on this. Leslie, can we wrap this up, Mazzino, for her passion for this job, unmatched by even yours truly, and Molly, coffee was never enough, Gunn, for her human interest puff piece work. A hearty welcome home to Anna. Since when is there a podcast, Nasser? And Bug, I was here last semester, Adams. A shout out to Ben Lunde, who gives the saying, respect your elders, a whole new meaning. And finally, thanks to Dickinson College, without which none of us would be here because, let's be honest, it's Carlisle in February.
Hey, Cody.
Yeah, hello?
I have a question.
Sure.
Southern rock or disco?
Disco, always. Disco Inferno.
You look like a Bee Gee.
Well, that'll work.